Welcome to the Esports Business Network podcast. I'm your host, Trent Knox. I'm the founder and CEO of Esports Business Network. This is EBN Podcast number 44. Our guest is Marc Patterson, the CEO of Connected Realm Entertainment and the co-chair of LA Venture Association Gaming. In this podcast, we dive into the future of mobile gaming from portables to mixed reality. We discuss role of media in combination with gameplay, and we chat about the vision for the future. Enjoy.
This is the future. Evolution. This is the future.
Welcome back to another Esports Business Network podcast. Today, my guest is Marc Patterson. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Trent. Great to be here.
Yeah, I've been following you for a few months since I got onto Clubhouse and been seeing you host these rooms, Esports 101, and it's I got an opportunity to speak at the LA Games Conference, which was virtual this year, and then you connected with me afterward, and I was like, why haven't I actually reached out to Marc to see if he wouldn't want to come on to the podcast? So here you are. Thank you for coming on the show again.
Yeah, it's really great to be here, and I really enjoy these conferences because they just really help to grow and connect the community.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm seeing more virtual conferences pop up across the world. From Brazil, I've seen one in Southeast Asia, Europe, all different necks of the woods around the world, and it's interesting to be offered the opportunity to speak at an LA Games conference, because I feel like there's even a distance between Texas esports and LA's esports, but we're here and we're going to learn more about what the LA scene is like, because of course you've got a lot of things going on in Los Angeles, and we also spoke a little bit before that you've got some business interests in New York, so we'll talk about that as well. But before we jump all the way into that, how did you get into gaming? What is your history with gaming?
You know, it's really interesting. I've always been in tech for my entire life. I was an avid gamer when I was a kid many, many moons ago. And I've always had a special interest in emerging tech. I was involved in the mobile industry and with telecommunications for the better part of my career. And that really moved me into a couple of areas that were very interesting to me. One was where media was going and how the relationship between digital media and telecommunications, mobile, you really kind of drove a lot of that. And then, this whole emergence of VR, AR, XR technology, and the ability for this technology to not only be able to connect people, but to also create different experiences that are much more engaging. I found that incredibly fascinating, and that naturally started to spawn relationships in the gaming industry. And so I've always kind of looked at it from a business perspective, and I've looked at it as much as I look at everything in my career, which is everything is really a jigsaw puzzle. And the more pieces you have, the more pieces you can connect. And that's always been kind of the way I look at this whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're one of the guests that's more a seasoned veteran of this industry. I've interviewed people just getting started to, a long tenured history in technology and investing in different spaces that are adjacent or in the esports industry. My question, I guess, for you is, with your experience, like, what is your perspective on retail and those things that you were talking about, VR, LAN centers, mobile cafes?
Mm-hmm.
Where's the business at as far from your perspective when it comes to those adventures?
I think that what's interesting is we're still in an age, as long as gaming has been around, and even as long as esports has been around, and even as large as this industry has gotten, with it, $175 billion industry, there's still a lot of experimentation that's going on. And it's interesting to watch the number of different types of things that are revolving around adjacent industries to the gaming itself. Everything from what I look very much at what's happening in the retail space from a standpoint of how does merchandising evolve into fashion? How does it evolve into music and the gamification of music? And what does this mean for adjacent industries that are also trying to evolve and use gaming technology? I mean, one of the biggest strengths of Unreal right now is that not so much what it does for gaming. I think everyone has already established what it can do for the gaming experience, but what it's doing to the movie industry has been fascinating. So, to ask the question of where do I see things thriving right now, I think one of the best things that's happened with the gaming industry as a whole, as well as what's happening with esports, is the fact that it remains very inclusive. Yes, you will have very strong communities that revolve around particular games, and there will be a whole ecosystem you can tap into if you're a brand or you're trying to market to them. But as a whole, you find this is an industry that's very welcoming of gamers that come from professional sports, that are musicians, that are coming from a lot of different industries. And because of that, that's why marketers are so keen, why brands are so keen to try to tap into this, because they see that this group, these billions of people who are gamers, is only going to continue to grow as a potential market. So I think that, in terms of the state of things, because it has so many crossovers, I think that opens up a wealth of opportunities like on a daily basis for people to try different things and see what works and see what doesn't.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that we'll take this down the road to start talking about the projects that you're working on, because you have Connected Realm Entertainment.
Mhm.
The type of services that you're providing, how does that increase awareness about how the esports industry operates, as far as, on the consumer side with the retail, to the sports side with tournaments like the Call of Duty, Fortnite, and these different platforms?
Yeah, it's a great question, Trent. And I think that to kind of understand me is to understand why I created Connected Realm. Connected Realm is a media publishing company that I founded with a couple of producers from ABC News. And what we do is we work with socially conscious brands on short form content. Well, what does that mean? It means that when we look at the kinds of messaging that are coming from brands, we always are looking at how do we tie that to a social cause, or tie that to something that has an impact that goes beyond just revenue. And there's a lot of commonalities between that approach with media and what is driving a lot of what's happening in esports right now. It's rare to find an esports team out there that considers themselves to be an esports team. I mean, FaZe Clan, 100 Thieves, what are they? Well, they're largely media companies. And so the ability to be able to provide forums for that kind of engagement and have professional content that's associated with that is something that is definitely an area to be addressed. And that's kind of what we're doing with Connected Realm. And that's how it crosses over to the other things that I do within esports. On in terms of how I'm giving back, I work with a nonprofit called the Los Angeles Venture Association, which is really, it's an organization that is providing a conduit for the investment community, as well as tying various vertical industries together to organizations that are emerging. So there's a lot of startups here in LA that are looking to get into various aspects of the esports and gaming industry, whether they be mobile game developers or they be merchandisers that are trying to create the next unique thing that's going to catch on with gamers. And what we're doing is we're providing a conduit for investors to be able to understand them, and for them to better understand how the investment community works. So a lot of it is about education. A lot of it is about engagement and elevation and core community building. And I think that's one of the things that's kind of the hallmark of what's happening with esports right now. The companies that are thriving in the esports community right now, whether they be the publishers, whether they be the leagues, whether they be the teams, they're the ones that are putting a priority on community building and strengthening it, reinforcing it, and creating an ecosystem that continues to thrive and really allow for that community to grow and not be isolated.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I have kind of a softball question and then maybe a hardball question. Maybe it might not even be a hardball question, but the first one, I definitely want to, give you the opportunity to promote something you mentioned to me, but I did a little bit more research. You recently wrote an article on mental health
Mhm.
in the space, and I wanted you to give the opportunity to talk about that a little bit.
Thanks for mentioning it, Trent. And I'll tell you, mental health was the impetus for why I created Connected Realm. The entire company revolved around this whole idea of social impact, and mental health is something that is near and dear to my heart for a number of reasons. But we were fortunate enough. I'm involved with the Esports Club, which is the largest esports club on Clubhouse. We've got about 32,000 people who are members of that. And one of the things that had come up in the course of several rooms that we've been hosting had been this area of mental health. And we were fortunate enough to connect with MTV Entertainment Group, who was working on an initiative called Mental Health Action Day, which is what was yesterday. And we actually got involved with them to do a clubhouse room, which we did a couple of days ago, that brought together not only having people from MTV, but also having people from Queen's Gaming Club, having people from Helium, people from, doctors that were involved with this from Take This, and really providing a forum for people to not only discuss, but to actually connect with one another. And that's one of the strengths of Clubhouse, because you're able to have that kind of instantaneous connection made. And the barriers that I think traditionally have existed even in podcasts where people aren't necessarily approachable. Yes, you can hear what they're saying, you can understand where they're coming from, but you may not have that instantaneous, I've got a question for you, can you answer it for me right now? That's one of the real strengths of what we get with Clubhouse. And what we did with this particular work with MTV, we had some incredible people come on. I mean, Lee Trink, the CEO of FaZe Clan, joined us to not only share what FaZe Clan is doing about mental health for gamers, but he actually, talked about his own personal experiences, how it relates to that, and that's incredibly powerful. It's one of the great things that's happened. It's one of the positives that's happened in terms of behavioral changes with COVID, is that people are much more accessible. And so, in terms of what we've done on the mental health side, one of the things that was super important to me coming out of that Clubhouse discussion was to ensure that the wealth of knowledge that was shared wasn't lost. And what the article really laid out for both the mental health community, the doctors and so forth, is we wanted to create a forum for people to share validated, vetted information so that people understood better about what mental health is about. And this is, it was a fascinating discussion. It was a 2.5 hour long room, but, we got into discussions about, just so many different topics. But one of the core questions that still is out there is this perception that that gaming is bad for mental health. And I think that the answer to that is not clear cut yes or no. You see out there that there are certainly a lot of studies that are pointing to now the benefits of how gaming helps with everything from socialization to being able to deal with stress to being used as a treatment. And I think that it's opened a whole new range of technology around digiceuticals that makes the question of how do you treat mental health, how do you deal with issues that are out there in a whole different light. It's not about, well, just medicate them and then they'll be fine. Now there are ways for people to have to really self-diagnose, to self-monitor themselves in ways that they couldn't before, because we're recognizing that a lot of the technology, a lot of what's happened with gaming has actually helped us to better understand human behavior. And so it's like I said, I could speak for hours about how tech is going to make mental health so much easier to both diagnose and deal with in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. and I don't know about you, but this past week has definitely given me an emotional roller coaster when it came to blockchain, NFTs, Twitch, all the things that have been popular and going on. And I guess I don't know how to differentiate the individual relationships with gaming versus like the collective group of being a part of the community of gaming. Is something that I've kind of been challenged with this week, with the fact of, if you want to build relationships in the gaming and esports space, there's going to be ups and downs, because it's hard to communicate, it's hard to connect at times, regardless of whether it's gaming or esports or whatever it is. You mentioned that the studies aren't conclusive on whether gaming uh, is a negative stimulant toward some of these mental health issues. But for me, on a personal level, I don't experience that as much as I think on a community level. Participating in multiplayer games or watching Twitch or going to a LAN center, I may experience more negative emotions.
Mhm.
Like more recently, watching Bitcoin plummet was pretty negative emotion. Watching Twitch and seeing that the meta right now is between gambling and women showing off their bodies in hot tub streams. It's sort of what is going on in this space, and how do people deal with the ups and downs of what is adjacent or part of gaming.
Yeah. That's an incredibly loaded question. And I think that
Yeah.
what's important to recognize with mental health, and even if you look at some of the aspects of mental health, like depression, um,
Hmm.
Christy St. Martin raised a really great point, and she's the CMO of Queen's Gaming Club, about the importance
Hmm.
of recognizing what are internal factors and what are external factors when it comes to mental health. Um,
Right.
Areas like bullying and microaggression and stimulus that is imposed on you, those are all things that can affect your mental state. And it's different than what may be a chemical or hereditary state that's affecting you from an internal perspective. You may not be affected by a stimuli in the same way as someone next to you, simply
Hmm.
because of, from an internal chemical makeup, that it may be different. But well, and to some of the points you've raised, one, you cannot be emotionally invested in Bitcoin or blockchain or cryptocurrency. You simply can't.
Hmm.
It's not. I can tell you, right. I don't need to be a doctor to tell you that's bad for your health. Uh, it,
Yeah.
the nature of decentralization is you're decentralizing the nature of the currency, but you're also decentralizing the control. And so, whatever can be manipulated today in traditional currency, those are largely gone in crypto. And I think that that's, because of that, you have to be cognizant of that. Um, if history shows what it's shown when it comes to Bitcoin, what goes down will come back up. And I
Hmm.
think that's you've got to, you're either in it for the short game, where you're going to try to ride one of these rises and get out quickly, or you're in it for the long game and anticipating when it's going to hit 180,000. So
Hmm.
we'll see when that happens. Um, I think to some of the other things that you talked about, with regards to streaming, um, this is the nature of what gaming is, and it shouldn't be a surprise to anyone that, from monetization to the nature of esports teams, that they are thriving in a rich media culture. That
Hmm.
people want self-expression. They want to have that. They want to have the freedom to be able to swear at someone while they're competing. They want to have the freedom to be able to express who they are. And that's why you see why TikTok has thrived. It's why YouTube has thrived. It's
Hmm.
because if you have media if you have a means to be able to express yourself in different and in interesting ways, you're going to use that. And I think that that's one of the biggest strengths about Twitch is it has a combination of being able to continue to reinforce a very strong community or communities revolving around specific games, but also having that media element so that you are able to express yourself and really convey your own identity to the people who are following you.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything you said 100% spot on. The hardball question I was going to ask you was, what is the state of the esports business, with it largely being driven by wagering, uh, you know, essentially gambling?
Well, in terms of where I see gambling going with this,
Mhm.
or in terms of where I see how the revenue models are going to work.
Well, on a regulation standpoint, it seems that most states and countries, to a degree, look at the esports industry as adjacent to casinos or adjacent to gambling, and haven't yet defined it, at least in the books, as more related to recreational activity, sports, leisure activities.
Yeah, I would. I mean, I think that it depends on the country, obviously, in terms of how they're approaching it. I think that this topic also starts to relate to the relationship of esports to things like the Olympics. And
Hmm.
yeah, and they seem to stem to the same piece, which is where's the state of regulation in terms
Hmm.
of ensuring that you've got fairness of competition, you have consistency of experience, and predictability or validation of the statistics that are being measured and being used. Those are all aspects that are very controlled by federations and, to a certain extent by the IOC when it comes to the Olympics. But in terms of from a gambling perspective, I think that that's one of the big impediments that's out there. I think there are states out there that would crave being able to legalize or to bring gaming into the gambling fold more full
Hmm.
fledged because of the revenue opportunity, in terms of what it can bring to their states. It's the reason why Las Vegas made such a big play for esports a few years ago, and why you saw so many facilities being built. Why did Topgolf make the investment there? It's clearly a
Hmm.
recognition that was going to be the next best parimutuel that you're going to be able to bet on.
Hmm.
I think that does that offer the opportunity for it to corrupt or change? I don't necessarily know if that's going to happen any differently than the introduction of brands into the experience, and whether or not that in any ways is corrupting what is the gaming experience. I think that you will find that the core gamers,
Hmm.
and I completely respect this, are they're a tight knit community when it comes to a particular game or platform for a reason. It's because of their deep respect for the game itself and not wanting to have external factors that are either going to change or control, or as they may perceive it, or as it may actually be the case, corrupt the experience.
Hmm. The way that you just phrased that, I mean, this is not your words, this is mine, but a good, interesting title or study would be, "Is gaming being gentrified?" It's interesting. You mentioned brands coming into the space, and the brands have always been there on the tournament side, maybe not so much on the consumer side.
I think that the question is, where do you accept a brand today? Um, do you accept a brand on the side of a NASCAR vehicle? Well, yeah,
Mhm.
it's just sort of how we've all grown up with it. So we expect that. We expect to see logos on uniforms. But do you see a brand now setting the rules for a competition? Do you see a brand saying, well, we're going to create our own variant of a Call of Duty League that's
Mm.
going where we can set what the rules are going to be because we may want to have an experience that's friendlier to brands. That's I think that's I like the use of the term gentrification because it's not the first time that I heard someone refer to it that way. Um,
Mm,
it's definitely, I think it's something that is of concern because there's a natural progression to perversion when it comes to uh, not having controls over what brands are controlling, what they're not. I think that for the most part, brands are passive in this experience. They just want to make sure that they have a means to be able to uniquely drive an activation. And so I think that there are a lot of really responsible marketing people out there that recognize that you don't want to alienate the gaming community because once you do, then you're done. It's not something that you can go back and reclaim.
mm, hmm. So I guess I'm interested when you're speaking with people for the LA Venture Association about gaming and esports, and they're interested in getting involved in the space. What are some of the highlights that you tell investors?
Um, Without, first of all, I will not give advice to people on whether or not they should or shouldn't get involved. I have to raise that disclaimer because the LA
Yeah.
Venture Association is not an accelerator, and we are not providing paid engagements to be able to tell people where to put their money. But
Mm,
when it comes to getting involved with the gaming community, the first thing we always say is do your research. Understand not only understanding who is doing what in this industry, but learn adjacency. Learn what types of brands that are already established in the community would be helpful to work with, not work against, but work with. Remember, the thing that drives esports, esports as a subset of the gaming community, but
mhm,
what drives it is association. And so, if you, as whether you're a gamer who has aspirations to be an influencer, what do you want to do? You want to be looking at brands that are accepted by the community, they're embraced by the community, um, and you want to be able to affiliate yourself with that. So, that's where, when it comes to understanding kind of the ecosystem you're involved with, League of Legends is a different ecosystem than Call of Duty. And even now, Valorant, if you look at the community, there's differences in that. We were talking to Riot Games yesterday about this, about the differences between League of Legends and Valorant and why it's been successful for Riot Games, because they actually are two different communities that are interconnected. And I think that
mhm.
that's really, the smart marketers recognize that. They recognize where the associations fit and where they don't. If I'm manufacturing the next great gaming peripheral, or I'm developing clothing for the gaming community, what am I going to do? I want to make sure that I understand what is.
Lost you there for a second,
Oh,
but
I'm sorry.
yeah, no worries. I think that that was a very robust answer around what you might say are the highlights when considering uh, pursuing some sort of investment in the space, or you know um, starting your own business even in the industry. I guess going with the asking you a little bit more question, connected realm entertainment side, with the short form content that you're advising your clients on, how are you approaching building influence and building celebrity in this space? There's very few celebrities in the esports space.
It's a growing number, and I think that when it comes to I think that when you look at media and you look at content, what we very much focus on with Connected Realm is bringing in professional production people who come from the news space, who have an acumen for dealing with episodic content, dealing with shorter form content, because think in terms of news magazines and how you're seeing that content presented. They're thinking in terms of how do you engage the talent that you have involved with this, and how do you connect that with really robust storytelling. Guess what? That's exactly what's happening in esports. It's happening in terms of how the games are developed. It's why people gravitate to one particular game as something that they really like more than something else. From a celebrity perspective, I think that it's. I would challenge you on the question of how do you define a celebrity nowadays, because there's a very big difference between a movie celebrity or a television celebrity and an influencer and a prominent gamer. If you spend, if you're spending 12 hours, 15 hours, 20 hours of your day on Twitch, your perception of a celebrity is going to be very different. And marketers recognize that.
That's interesting. I guess I am not splitting the hairs between what's a virtual celebrity and what's a offline celebrity. But if you did split the hairs and if I was only a consumer of digital content, I guess then my filter would be kind of narrowed to just what's a virtual celebrity, not someone that I might go interact with offline. When I think of celebrity, I think of, someone who's regularly within publications, news outlets, being talked about, not on a niche level, but on like a mainstream level. And I'm there are very few, maybe Ninja, Nade Shot, Double Lift, a few that you can mention that are in those mainstream outlets as well as in the digital outlets.
Yeah, and if we're looking at it from a mainstream celebrity perspective, I think it goes back to what we talked about earlier with the crossover that's happening. If you look 3 years ago, how many NBA players were involved in gaming?
Right. Yeah.
How many are involved with it now? And why did that happen? Part of it is a recognition that they may have been gamers, but they weren't esports people. And now they've recognized that esports gives them it gives them an alignment with their fan bases because their fan bases are gamers. Two, it allows for them to have that interaction at the same time they're doing something that they love, which is gaming. So it hasn't been so much that celebrities haven't been involved, say, in gaming. I just think that the forums for that to be mainstream, available for you to see that and say, oh my goodness, he's a gamer. There's more forums now for that because the nature of media has become largely decentralized. We're no longer, even in the internet space, the number of media outlets that are out there that are catering to your individual community versus more mainstream view, those are becoming, those are still continuing to expand.
Yeah, I mean, once you mentioned sports going crossing over with gaming and esports, I think of Juju Smith-Schuster, Giannis Antetokounmpo. I started thinking about it, but my mind is generally from the gamer perspective. I'm looking at what gamers have what's the word I'm looking for? Broken out of just being titled as he's just a gamer. He just does that. But these other industries have found a vertical into gaming.
There are many who would contend, and there are plenty of marketing people that would say that today's state of that crossover is unidirectional. That there's a lot that are coming in, but there aren't a lot that are coming out. And I think it's been interesting to watch. It's in the same way I see platform specific influencers. That someone may have been just a TikTok star. Does that translate into a television series? In a lot of cases, it doesn't. And I don't think that you have that. I think it's partially, it's kind of the state of where mainstream media is versus what's happened in gaming and how the role that media plays within the gaming community. But I still think that we haven't quite seen that crossover happen. I think that we're getting close. I think that influencer marketing is starting to drive awareness of people from a mainstream perspective outside of the platforms where they exist. And I think it will happen, but it's still, I think it's more, you're getting far more notoriety from a professional athlete joining an esports team than you're getting from one of those people doing something outside of gaming.
Mm. That makes me think of how difficult is it for traditional influencers, people who come from television, to find success online, because they're not going to see, because the people who started online are going to have the analytics and the metrics behind them.
Mhm.
And is there kind of is there like a gatekeeping on both ends, where it's like, it's not a money issue, it's how to spend the money when it comes to getting a digital influencer to be in television, whether that be like a Jake Paul or something like that, or
Mhm.
the other way around, but like Will Smith starting a YouTube channel.
It's I think that there are a lot, and I'm not saying that all, but there's a lot of celebrity that's out there that's manufactured, that
Mm,
is the product of really good marketing strategy, and not necessarily whether or not the interests are organic. And I think that spills over to a lot of aspects of how media is being created right now. Um, One of the struggles that you see with a lot of the traditional television networks, broadcast networks, these conglomerates, is their digital strength versus their television strength. It's completely different. Their digital strength is relatively weak. I mean, there's opportunities to be overtaken on a regular basis. And the smart approach being taken now, particularly as I look at some of the streaming platforms that are out there, is that they recognize what omni-platform really means, which is, you have to, from a content strategy perspective, being look at natively being part of multiple platforms. What does that mean? It means if you're producing a particular show, let's just say that you're I don't want to promote anyone in particular. You're producing a show that's on a streaming platform.
mhm,
Do you just produce that 1 hour show every week, or those 8 episodes for a season? Or are you producing a content library around every one of those episodes, so that there's a TikTok element, there's a YouTube element, there's an Instagram element, you've got a full-fledged Twitter strategy around what you're doing. If it plays into gaming, are you tied into Twitch? That you've thought that through. And the reason why I talk about that from the content perspective is that's how you are perceiving the actors, the talent, the on-screen elements that are associated
mhm,
with it. The fact is, Baby Yoda became popular not just because he's on a TV show. It's because he was created as a digital presence. And so,
mhm,
you associated with them because whatever native platform you gravitate to a particular platform more so than another one. If you're perceiving that person, that talent, that artist, that entity on that platform, you're now becoming part of the community. You're starting to become part of the community that revolves around that individual. And the smart marketers are the ones who recognize, well, wait a second, if I tie that community and that community and that community, what have I done? I've created actually a large community. And that's how you create fandom. And
mm,
that's kind of the ties between your media strategy and how you create that organic following. You're continuing to do what you do, but you're doing it on so many different platforms that you're able to build out and become part of a common conversation.
mm. Yeah, I'm always curious about that when it comes to Twitch partners, when, because you can see like traditional media agencies are able to, get licensing deals that kind of don't get them boxed in like a lot of the Twitch partners are.
Mhm.
And and this, there's just so much to talk about. We've got some short time left on this podcast, but the one of the things that carried over throughout the whole LA Games conference was the talk about the metaverse. And I never really heard the term used in so many different ways. But it really was enlightening, because it kind of speaks to what we're talking about here, is how can you be omni-platform keep licensing, own your IP, and be kind of fluid within the industry?
Good question. And if I could answer that, I think it would be adding about 5 more zeros to the end of my salary.
Yeah.
Because at least my state right now, there's a lot of people that profess to know what the meta universe will mean to marketing or to brands going forward. I don't think that it's defined yet. I think what we're going to have is another age of experimentation where we see what types of experiences can resonate with audiences, and what kinds of experiences have an evergreen element to it. Because I think that's one of the things that's so critically important to IP. One of the things that we look at with Connected Realm is we look at the evergreen elements of the content we're creating. Are we creating stuff that is about social consciousness today, or are the themes that we're exploring universal, so that that IP that we're generating today is going to have value a year, 5, 10 years from now? Because that's the beauty of digital, is the ability to be able to look at a content and determine where it best fits, and where do you put your emphasis. Do you put emphasis on its value right now? And certainly when it comes to working with social causes, some of them are very much about what's happening right now. Or are you looking at something longer term? And I think that it's that element that starts to fracture the question of what happens in a meta universe. In what platforms will it make sense for something to have more value in terms of an IP, simply because it will be around longer and be relevant longer? And so I think that there's a lot of questions still to be answered as to what that actually looks like. It's a clever term to use right now, but I think that there are a lot of traditional marketing questions or IP questions that have to still be answered before we can actually see something that's going to be truly innovative in that. Not to say there isn't going to be, because there's always clever ideas, but right now I think it's still to be defined.
Yeah, absolutely. My last question is like a more in a practical sense. I feel a lot of that stuff was kind of just trying to play and see if we can't figure some stuff out. With this last one, I think it's like very specific. I think it has to do with the mental health aspect, but also on the physical health. What do you see what's going to be developed product wise for ergonomics and diet in the space of esports and gaming?
Really good question. Actually, it was one of the topics that was discussed on our clubhouse on Tuesday. This whole area about digital nutrition, physical nutrition, and mental nutrition. I think that we're going to see a lot. I think that there are a lot of interesting studies that are going on right now that are linking nutrition to mental health. And I think that we're also seeing the effects of everything. The reason why there's been such a boom in what's happening with ergonomics is recognizing the need to be able to sustain the amount of time that you can do gaming. The esports teams right now are and the leagues are very cognizant of the fact that the quote unquote career span of a professional gamer is very short. I mean, it's actually on the level of the average length for an NFL player, simply because the demands are physical on people who are doing that large amount of gaming. And so I think we're going to continue to see innovations around that. I think that we are going to see continued innovations around the games themselves, in terms of dealing with everything from eye strain to eye training to making certain that you're able to actually experience a game for longer periods of time without incurring physical ailments from that, without impairing with eye strain and brain strain. And so I think that there's going to be continued work around that. I think that there are companies that are out there right now that are promoting improved nutrition for professional gamers, with the specific design of having them become essentially the influencers that will drive it for the broader gaming community. And you do see companies out there that are trying to cater to the nutritional deficiencies that are being studied in prolonged gaming experiences. I don't think that we're going to get past these visual images that every gamer eats 3 pizzas a night or things like that. But I think that we do have an opportunity, and I think professional gamers recognize this in the esports leagues. The teams recognize this, that nutrition plays a very important factor in performance, and in that way, esports has a lot of commonalities to professional sports in terms of ensuring that people are in the best physical health so that they're in the best mental health.
Yeah, absolutely. I wish I could eat 3 pizzas a night. I think I'd be a little bit overboard there for me. But yeah, I really appreciate you coming on the show, and I want to give you the opportunity to let the audience know and the listeners know how that they can connect with you and your brands.
Oh, thank you. I think that reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm there quite often because I think it's valuable for us to be able to continue to build our community. I would encourage people to join us on Clubhouse. The Esports Club is the largest club. It's sponsoring rooms every day of the week. So come join us there. I run a room called Esports 101 every Tuesday evening. Certainly join there. If you're new to gaming or you're new to esports and you want to get some perspectives on it, we have a slew of moderators from all aspects of the esports world that are there to answer questions. And that's all we do. It's just a big Q&A session. So we invite you to do that. We have special sessions that we do, such as what we're doing. We've done with mental health. We've got a couple of others that we're working on at the moment with other brands because we do see the value in having brands bring the doctors that are supporting what they're doing and really educate people in different ways that the gaming community is actually helping gamers. So we're very big on that. And then finally, follow the LA Venture Association. Like I said, I run Lava Gaming there, and that's www.lava.org to learn more. If you're an investor or you're interested in investing in the gaming community or anything that's revolving around the LA investment community or the LA business community, certainly check that out because there's a wealth of resources there as well. But this has been a great discussion, Trent. I really appreciate it, and it's been great to talk about so many aspects of esports in one sitting.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Thank you very much. Again, this has been Marc Patterson. This is the Esports Business Network podcast. Thank you for listening. Hey all, it's Trent Knox. I wanted to let you know that I use Anchor to produce and distribute the EBN Podcast. If you've never heard of Anchor FM before, it's the easiest way to start a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need in a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today. Hey y'all, it's Trent Knox, founder and CEO of Esports Business Network. I want to say thank you for listening to this podcast. If you're finding value in the podcast, I would greatly appreciate it if you share the podcast to your network and write a positive review on your preferred podcast platform. If you're feeling extra generous, feel free to make a contribution to our working capital accounts on Cash App or PayPal. Our username is ESPORTSBIZNET. That's Esports BizNet on both platforms. As always, we'd love for you to join our community and platform at https://www.ebn.gg. You can take advantage of a free subscription to our Bronze membership by following the directions on the homepage. Part of the Bronze membership is access to our Discord server and private membership channels. The conversation only evolves with participation from esports entrepreneurs like yourself. We need to hear about your esports business to understand how we can move the industry forward as a community. You can also join the community by joining the Facebook and LinkedIn groups. An additional goal of EBN is to move the conversation forward on your preferred social media platform. So as a last note, don't forget to follow us on social media for current events, news, and other esports related topics. Follow and subscribe to Esports Business Network on social media. Looking forward to networking with you very soon.